When we first went to Jordan, my goal was like, let's capture the tragedy, the heartbreak, the awful situations these refugees are in. But when I got there, I saw something a lot more inspiring, and it was how the Syrian refugees are helping one another. Everyone we interviewed in this documentary was a Syrian refugee fleeing their country and entering another country, and not just waiting for aid, but starting these initiatives, these programs to help each other out. And it's kind of obvious that when you put refugees in a camp, like you saw in the beginning of the film, it just ends poorly. You're sheltering them from society, you're not giving them any autonomy. But when you let them, you immerse them in society, that the refugees are going to come with their skills and they're going to come up with programs and initiatives to help each other out. So it's really about Syrians helping Syrians despite losing almost everything. So this is my mom and dad. This picture was taken in 1980s, 83 I believe, in Syria. And both of them immigrated from Syria to the United States in the early 90s, and they now work at the University of Buffalo. So they came here, as they told me, because they wanted to live in a better country with better opportunity. And I didn't really understand the implications of that at the time, because growing up here, you're taught that America is the greatest country, land of the free, home of the brave. So it made sense. Like, if you lived anywhere else, why wouldn't you want to come to America? It's amazing. So I didn't really give it much thought, but they came here in about 1991. They stressed a lot the importance of recognizing my roots. So since, very early on, I think right when I was born, they brought me back to Syria. And since then, I went almost every summer to visit my family, to spend time in Damascus, our mother city. And this is me and my grandfather just hanging out on a balcony in Syria. So Syria, Damascus was kind of underdeveloped. It was, not a lot of big buildings, not well-paved roads, not much going on. And we're talking like 2001, about 2000 was one of my first memories in Syria. And it seemed very decrepit, but it was still an awesome place. It was still a lot of fun. And one thing that we did was we would always go out, me and my cousins, 10, 11, 12 years old, we'd go out and we'd stay out till, late at night. And, it didn't faze us. We didn't worry about anything. We took a cab home at like 1, 2 a.m. and we were never worried. It was very safe, despite being, a little underdeveloped. So the first time I went to Syria, we went to attend my uncle's wedding, and it was crazy. As you see, we had like sword fighting in the streets. It was a performance, obviously, and it was partying, dancing, an amazing time. And one of the traditions was to take the groom, and as you're driving him to the wedding hall, just honk obnoxiously as much as you can until you get to the wedding hall. Obviously, that's a disturbance, so we got pulled over, and the cop came up to us, and he's like, "What are you doing? You're being loud and you're being noisy, you can't do that." And then we're like, "Yeah, but we're, my uncle's getting married, so we're just celebrating." He's like, "All right, give us $50 and I'll let you go." And we're like, "Sweet, no ticket, no fine, no nothing, we're just gonna give him the money and we'll go." So at the time, I thought that was cool. I didn't really understand what was wrong with that. So through the subsequent summers, I went back in like 2002, 2004, 2006, 2008. Syria and Damascus became more and more developed. The roads became better. They started opening these public squares with these massive fountains and malls, and it was just, things were turning up. And I thought that things were going well for Syria. They even opened a theme park called Happy Land. So it was really fun. Me and my cousins would always just go wherever we can on our own. Again, stressing that Damascus was a very safe city. And of course, being out late with your cousins sometimes leads to some inexcusable experiments. Probably shouldn't have been doing that at such a young age, but nonetheless, I had a great time. But one thing I was always curious about in Syria growing up was these images that were literally everywhere. On ancient sites, store stands, public buildings, everywhere you go was a large poster of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian president. And the first time this came to my attention, I was out with my family and we were going to the mall, and I was like, "Why is this picture everywhere? Like, what's up with that?" And they immediately told me to just shh, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. I was really confused, and then later they explained to me that there are secret police in Syria that dress like civilians, and they just listen. They listen to people who might be cooking up some dissent, some negative feelings towards the president. If you make a bad comment in public about the president and you get caught by the Syrian police, it wasn't uncommon to just disappear. So my very last visit to Syria, I lost my passport. It was terrible. I left it in a taxi along with my suitcase, and I was distraught. I went to the American embassy, and I'm like, hey, I lost my passport. What do? I need to go home. And they're like, okay, before we give you a replacement passport, we need a police report from the Syrian police, making a statement that your passport was missing or stolen, blah, blah, blah. So I went to the police station, and they told me to sit down and to wait. And at the police station, there was a little boy. I want to say he was between the ages of 8 and 11, and he was handcuffed to a table. And the police were interrogating him. What I gathered was that maybe he was in a fight or that he stole something, but they were asking him, where's your mother? Where's your father? How can we get a hold of your parents? And he said, well, my mother, she's a domestic worker. She cleans people's homes. She doesn't have a cell phone. She goes from house to house, so I don't know where she is right now. You can't call them. So a police officer slapped him right in the face, talking 8, 9, 10 years old. And then he turns around and looks at me and he's like, we'll get to you in a minute. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a huge sign of an oppressive regime. And then looking back in my memory, I thought back to the time we were able to bribe a police officer out of a ticket. Again, oppressive regime. Corruption was rampant. So even though Syria was appearing to develop externally, the cities were developing, internally, within the government, within the bureaucracies and the police, was absolute corruption. And there was really very little regard for human dignity at an official level. So that leads to this. The whole revolution started, sort of because of the Arab Spring. People felt empowered, and people that wouldn't normally speak up, against the president out of fear of the secret police started speaking out. And what really set things ablaze was these children did graffiti, and they made slogans saying something like Bashar al-Assad, get out, or down with Bashar. And these children were arrested, and their parents weren't told where they were being held, and they weren't released. So protests started happening to get the kids to be set free. And as the story goes, the military opened fire at these protests. Civilians started firing back. Civil war. So as a first-generation Syrian American, I feel this dual responsibility. I have a responsibility to my country that I live in now, United States, to uphold our values, abide by our laws, be patriotic. But I also have a responsibility to my mother country, in a sense. I have to serve my mother country as well as serve my own country at the same time. And I'm sure if any of you are immigrants or first generation, you understand this dual responsibility, these dual attachments. You have one foot here in the United States and one foot at home. So I'm a filmmaker. I realize I need to do something. So I traveled to Jordan with my sister and my father to capture these stories. I also thought of another initiative to kind of bridge this gap between my two homes, in a sense. And it had a lot to do with pop culture. I'll show you this video.